the beginning of this season. I said, if I'm going to lose to anybody, I would love to lose to a Black woman, because that would be the first time that would happen in Big Brother history. And I'm all about being a part of that. So,
well, obviously, congrats on second place. It's not what you wanted. How are you feeling about being, losing to Taylor when you obviously took her to the end? Do you feel like you underestimated her, ability to convince the jury, or her strategy, or her story? Talk to me about that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think as far as how I generally feel, I don't know if I would have done anything differently looking back on it, because I looked at the two people who I had the option of choosing, and both I really would have loved to sit next to, just for the way that they played their games and how honorable they have been as people throughout this time from what I've seen. But I truly thought that against Turner, his resume was way more stacked than mine. And if I were to sit next to him, it would purely be a resume conversation, right? Whereas with Taylor, I felt like there was a little bit more margin with my resume versus hers. But you're completely, you mentioned something around underestimating her ability to communicate to the jury. That was something I didn't consider, is how well she would be able to resonate her story with how much she's overcome, being on the block 6 times, I guess. And, everybody who sat next to her went home, and her also controlling her own destiny, winning her fair share of HOHs. It says a lot about the person that she is and her gift in communication. I definitely applaud her for that.
Has anyone told you that you probably would have won against Turner?
I was talking to my mom in here, and she sort of hinted at it, and
you would have won, sadly.
Yeah, it's a surprise to me, because and maybe this is where a little bit of the gameplay came in when I've had conversations with Taylor and Brittany, and I think they put the fear of God in me about sitting next to Turner, because in my mind, from the conversations that I had with them, Brittany and her efforts to stay, she had said, like, look, if you're sitting next to Turner, like, you are going to lose. And I think eventually that thought just cemented in my mind. And knowing that now, yeah, of course, I probably would have made that decision then, especially since we've been so close throughout the entire season. I literally hated the fact that I had to choose between two of them. But it is what it is. You live and you learn. And I told Amira this when we formed our final two, or when I proposed the final two at the beginning of this season. I said, if I'm going to lose to anybody, I would love to lose to a Black woman, because that would be the first time that would happen in Big Brother history. And I'm all about being a part of that. So the fact that it happened, I guess I spoke it into the ether, and it happened. So here we are.
So the Taylor relationship is obviously complicated, right? I think earlier in the season, there were a lot of lies. Paloma, was not always telling the truth about Taylor, and I think it affected a lot of people's view of her in the house. But you had said some things too that people thought, were a little misogynistic. That she's cold and she, doesn't deserve. She's not a good representative. Like there were definitely things you've said, and I know that you guys developed a relationship later in the game, and there were times that you definitely were not thrilled with her and might have said some things. And so I guess I'm just trying to reconcile your relationship. And do you think Taylor is a good representation for the season?
Yeah, for sure. 100%. I think Taylor is a great representation of this season because of exactly what she talked about in her speech, her resilience. The way that she handled being on the block every week was in her true fashion. And honestly, I would resonate with it too, because we were both touted as people who were generally unbothered. There would be situations where our names were getting thrown out left and right, but we both kept an even head, and I respect that about her game and about her as a person. As far as the things that I said earlier on in the season, which I do not remember, and I've had conversations with Taylor where I have come to terms with the fact that I was not aware of everything that was truly going on, and my perspective on things was completely different. And based off of the information I was working with, I made those statements, and I apologized to Taylor for, the fact that I thought of her in a way different light earlier on in the season. And of course, as far as things happening recently, I think from my perspective, I'm a human. I communicated how I felt about things from my perspective as far as like how we interacted with each other in one way versus in another light, in different situations. And again, if I said anything that came across as, misogynistic or disrespecting of women, I completely apologize, because that was not my intent. I was just trying to communicate how I felt with her. So moving forward, we're still getting to know each other as people, honestly. Like, folks have probably saw that we got a lot closer towards the end of the season, but that is just one aspect of getting to know a person. There's so much more to know about someone, especially outside of this game environment. The game can influence so much of the thoughts that you have about someone, trying to read their intentions and understand why they're doing certain things. Whereas now that we're outside in the world, I feel like we can have more humble, open, and transparent conversations about, each other and what we want to do moving forward.
What votes for Taylor surprised you the most? Because I know I was surprised about Kyle, Terrance. What were you surprised by?
The same stuff you were. So Kyle, Terrance, Joseph, I think
Indy, maybe?
I think Indy also voted for Taylor, right?
Yeah, it was 8-1.
Yeah, 8-1. So Turner was my only vote. So yeah, those 4 votes right there, Sharon, I thought were pretty solid. I especially from a Joseph and a Kyle perspective, because we had formed that alliance in the pound and had worked together so closely throughout the game. And all of us got so close throughout this season that I thought, and we had conversations, especially with Joseph, around, if it's not me, it's you, bro. We want to see, each other win in this game. So those were definitely surprising. And then with Terrance, he was all about, at least to me, he was like, oh, you got to make a big move. You got to do this. You got to do that. Like, you got to play big brother. So by making that move to evict Turner at the end, I thought I'd seal the deal with Terrance on his vote, just by virtue of adding that to my resume. So I don't know what I could have done more in that situation.
I don't think you could have done anything more, to be honest, against Taylor at least. So I think, Would you ever play Big Brother again?
Oh, man.
Need a break?
It's tough to answer that question right now.
I know.
And out of, just coming out of a 3-month experience, I'm gonna have to think about it, but I never close off any doors.